I'm really delighted that I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Jason Bascoe from Safer London, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about violence in London. Then we're going to move on and we're going to meet Mikey Davis and Frankie Sanchez, two of the Cure Violence team from Chicago, and they will take us through the bulk of this session. I'll speak to you all soon, but over to you now, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. Trying to get my technology in hand. Pausing for a second because this is, as Sherry said, this is one of our most important webinars out of the 3, and I actually feel honored to actually lead on introducing some of these people that's coming from America. First of all, my name is Jason Bascoe. I'm a service manager at Safer London, and I'm responsible for overseeing the service delivery of violence and exploitation services. Heard a little pop there. The specific topics I've been asked to speak about are mainly violence and credibility. And if I'm honest with you, I'm going to speak about the credibility in a minute, but I'm going to speak about the violence first. Because we've got a few speakers from Cure Violence, and they come all the way from America to talk to you about the amazing model that they've got. They've got a new community-based intervention project that they want to share with you. And I'll let you hear all about that from them. But the main theme today is about credible messages and stopping youth violence. And that's very important because if I'm honest with you, up until a few minutes ago, I didn't really know what I was going to say. It's not that because I'm not prepared. It's not because I don't write notes or things like that. It's just that I don't see myself as anybody or any expert when it comes to violence or youth violence. And I was up all night, and that's a whole nother story because my mum called me at 12. I'm my mummy's boy, and it's actually my birthday. And it's ironic that people have been asking me all day, why are you working on your birthday? And it's a part of one of the things that I would love to do. And the gift that I would love in life is to stop some of this youth violence, because as I say, I'm speaking to you from the heart, and it's coming from my heart because I'm very passionate about stopping youth violence, yeah? And the reason why I'm passionate is because that I have a really issue with some of the things that's going on in the world today, with some of the youth them killing other youths, yeah, with some of the attitudes that they have in life. And I feel a bit responsible, if I'm honest with you. I feel responsible because I'm not an expert on violence, but I am a member of society, yeah. And as a member of society, yeah, I feel like I have to play my part in reducing it. And I'm just like everybody else out there, yeah. And right now we're all working from home or whatever, or I am. And at the moment, it's what, 3 something in England. If I was to look out the window right now, like, I could see kids and children, like, and young people just coming back from school. And if violence was to happen to any form of violence was to happen outside there, I'm sure, like, I'm gonna run out there and try to see what's going on and try and do what I can do to stop it. Yeah, and that's just innate in me as a human being in society. And I'm sure all of you's got that same thing inside of you. So when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you from the heart, and it's in everybody's heart. We don't want to look out our window and see something happening to a young person and we don't do something about it. Yeah, and I'm also going to say something else. I've got a young person that lives in this house with me. She's not here at the moment, but I wouldn't want to see nothing happen to her. And I'm sure you can say the same thing. You don't want people in your house, young people in your house, to be affected by this violence. So we all got this part to play, and we're all passionate about it, yeah? And these people that are going to speak after me, I'm honored to actually introduce them, if I'm honest with you, because these people are doing more than looking out the window and trying to stop the violence, yeah? Because they looked out their window and they did something about it in their local community, yeah? And my local community is London right now, yeah? And I just finished talking to my mother and other people on the phone and saying, yeah, I'm about to go into a webinar and talk to people that's in America. And they say, oh, you're doing good things, this. And I'm saying, you know what? I respect what they're doing because they're coming over here and trying to help us with our issue. Yeah, it's our issue. But likewise, it's their issue because violence is everywhere. And when I say it's everywhere, it's everywhere. Yeah, and it's in America, it's in Jamaica. That's one thing that everybody can say. Violence is everywhere. Yeah, and the speakers, they're from all over the world, and I applaud them, as I say, yeah, because they're playing their part. Yeah, just like I want to play my part. And the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because another reason why I say I feel responsible, not just as a person in society, but I've experienced violence myself, yeah, and I've been a victim and I've been a perpetrator, yeah, and trauma is a thing where when you're a victim, yeah, I learned about trauma in recent days, in recent weeks, in recent years. I realized that myself as an individual being impacted by violence, yeah, it gave me a different reaction. It made me say, and want to lash out. And that's not good. And the reasons for violence are numerous, yeah? There's numerous reasons for violence. But a lot of it, the youth violence is attached to crime and wrongdoing, yeah? And as I say, I feel a part of it as a member of society, and I feel a part of it as a person that's responsible for initiating some of this youth violence years ago. So I stand before you, and I say I'm undressing myself because I've never been a person to ever want to share or be proud of saying that was me years ago. Yeah, but people say that I'm credible, and that's what I'm getting back to today. Why do people say I'm credible? Yeah, it's not because I've done wrong. Yeah, that doesn't make me credible. Yeah, I'm gonna tell you that now. Yeah, it's not because I've done violence that don't make me credible. It's not because I'm speaking today that don't make me credible. The word credible is about being convincing, it's about being believed, it's about what you're saying is understood and taken on board by others. And if you're right now listening to me and taking on board what I'm saying, then I'm credible. But am I credible to a young person? Yeah. And maybe a young person will say I'm credible because I come from similar backgrounds. But that doesn't mean that other people aren't credible. Yeah. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. That being a person that's done wrong or having lived experience, it doesn't make me credible. And I stand before you, and I never, ever, ever wanted to tell people that I've got lived experience. Yeah, I do not do that. That's not my thing. Yeah, I got into this job to help others. Yeah, no one helped me. Yeah, when I say no one helped me, nobody helped me in life. Yeah, I was literally spiraling out of control. And when I say spiraling out of control, I've been in and out of prisons. I would have never said that to any of my colleagues before, but I'm saying it now. I've been doing all kind of wrong. I've done everything in life that you could possibly imagine. But in 2008, credible messages came to me. Yeah, and when I say to you credible messages, remember I said to you, no one helped me, but there were some credible messages out there. And the people want to always have this message of what is a credible messenger. That's what I'm trying to say. It's something that you can look at and believe and be convinced that. And the credible messages for me were in 2008. Because in 2008, I was lying down in prison and I was doing a 12-year sentence and I was about to come home. Yeah, and I've never shared that with any of my colleagues. Yeah, and for me to say that now, like, it's very touching. And it's on my birthday I'm saying it because it's my present that I want to give to you. I want you to go out and accept what I'm saying and try and change the world and stop this violence. Yeah, that's my present to you, and your present to me would be to accept that. Yeah, because I believe I'm credible now because I can convince those that I'm speaking the truth. Yeah, I've been shot. Yeah, and I've shot. Yeah, and it's not right. Yeah, and when I say it's not right, no one helped me to change my life around. The people that helped me to change my life around were those that gave me hope. And ironically, I don't know any of them. Yeah, I was lying on my back in 2008 saying that I'm coming out and I'm coming out and the world better be careful of me because what? I was so angry. Yeah, and you know who changed my mind? Lewis Hamilton, Serena Williams, Barack Obama. Yeah, those people showed me that everything that people told me in life when I was young was wrong, that a black man can't amount to nothing. And I was told that, so I believed that. And I went down the road as just not caring, not giving an F. Yeah, and that's what happened to me. I lied down in prison and that's what happened to me. But when I was coming out, it was a week before I was coming out, I turned on the TV and I saw Barack Obama actually won the presidency. So I believe that a black man can get something. So it made me say, you know what, Jason, there's no more excuses. You got to go out and do it. Yeah. And I sat there and I watched Barack all night long because I believed that somebody was going to kill him. And that's the mentality that I had in my head, violence. Yeah, and I don't know where that came from, if I'm honest with you. I believe that the world wasn't ready for Obama, and if he was to win, they was going to kill him. Yeah, and that's worrying, that's troubling for me to not ever believe in goodness or that somebody can do good and be applauded. So that's why it's important that I say to you, I applaud those people there today that are going to speak after me, because they got an important message and they're trying to stop the violence, and they're looking out their window, they're looking outside our windows, they're looking outside everybody's window. Yeah, and when I stand in front of a young person, people say that I'm credible. It's because I'm speaking from the heart. Yeah, and when I say I'm speaking from the heart, I have to look at a young person, they know that I feel their pain. Yeah, and that makes me credible. Yeah, it doesn't say that the members of my team aren't credible because they don't have my experience. Yeah, I've got a member of my team that book smart, educated up into a master's degree. She's never done nothing wrong in life. She's very credible. Yeah, so credible is just about being believed. It's just about being able to convince young people to stop doing this violence. And that's what I want. I just want them to stop. Yeah. And as I say, I feel responsible because I used to have young people that used to follow me and just do what I would want them to do. And now I just want them to just do right. Yeah. People said I would never, ever become a manager of a young people service or whatever. And I never ever wanted to do that. That's not me. That's not my thing. My thing was to help the youth. Yeah. And if nobody knew my title or whatever, that would be all right. But it's just like, credibility is just like this. It's simple as that. You see somebody down the road and they need help, and you look at them and you say, you know what, brother, yeah, are you all right? Can I help you? And that brother believes you. He believes that help that you're offering is genuine. You're not going to judge him. You're not judgmental. You're coming from him. You're understanding that, you know what, I saw you. You look similar to me, or there's something about you that I've recognized, and you look down. You don't look like, and you're just helping somebody out. And that's what it is. I'm meant to talk to you about violence. I'm meant to talk to you about some form of expertise, but I ain't got that. I want to hand over to people that I know that can change things. Yeah, I can't change much. If I'm credible to you, I don't know. If I'm credible to young people, I don't know. But one thing I do know is that everything I say is from the heart. Yeah, and going back to what I said in the beginning, I'm passionate about this. That's why I will come here on my birthday and work. Yeah, because the best gift to me is to one day look out that window and there's no violence. Yeah, and if I did that, then all of the wrong I've done in life before, that just disappears to me. Yeah, and I'm just going to introduce a guy from America. His name is Mikey. He's coming from Cure Violence, and he's going to talk about the models here, and he's the expert, and they've got all the epidemiology. So Mikey, I'm going to hand over to you, and hopefully they'll listen to you as a credible messenger.
Mikey, sorry, Mikey, can I just jump in firstly to say happy birthday to Jason? As somebody that works alongside Jason, him sitting there telling me he's not credible is so far from the truth. I also want to welcome two other people that weren't here right at the beginning, but people may have seen them join. And I'm going to let you do the introductions, Mikey, if you don't mind, and everybody will be available afterwards. But big happy birthday to Jason. And Jason, you're a star, and I cannot thank you enough for everything you do for all the young people you work with. So thank you. Over to you, Mikey.
Thank you, Sherry. And thank you, Jason, for that setup. And happy birthday, brother. You know, I'm wishing you the best and wish you many more for sure. And thank you for being here with us today on your birthday. You know, it's definitely appreciated. So I definitely first want to take the time to thank my brothers, Frankie, as well as my brother, K-Bane, for being here with us. And I did see one of my good brothers, Brother Muhammad Hashi, joined us as well, you know, so I appreciate you brothers being here, and I'm looking forward to us diving into these conversations about how this work looks like and how it's implemented in our respective communities. First, I just want to say my name is Michael Davis. I'm a national and international program specialist, technical assistant and trainer for Cure Violence Global. And we're just going to talk a little bit about what it looks like to set up this program. But first, I want to do an overview of what our program actually looks like. So we based this program off of 3 components that was initialized and stamped by the World Health Organization to stop contagious, to fight this epidemic of violence. And those 3 steps is interrupting the transmission, preventing future spread, and changing group norms. And just to get into a little bit more depth to get everybody to understand why we use these particular health methods to help us fight diseases. And we see so many commonalities around violence and these other epidemics that have been previously and are current, you know what I mean, and how they affect us, and how these three methods have actually helped us decrease violence across all sectors in multiple countries and multiple cities and communities across the world. So when we think about interrupting the transmission, and this is going into the CV model, you know, that's for us is stopping the process of progress. Stopping the process of progress from continuing to go, you know. So we got a few different steps inside of that, and I'll just go through a few of those steps. And you can also access the recordings from the two previous webinars that we've had on the science of violence and understanding that, as well as the health-based solution to violence. And you can get that, you can see those webinars and view those webinars at Safer London's website at saferlondon.org. So breaking down into these pieces a little bit. So when we think about interrupting the transmission, we know we want to make sure that our workers are always mediating conflict. So our staff identify ongoing and brewing conflicts through their relationships and establish relationships in those particular communities. And we talk to key individuals and key players, as well as community members, about disputes, arrests that have possibly occurred currently, prison releases, and other situations, utilizing our mediation techniques to resolve these particular situations peacefully. And then we go into a piece where we make sure we keeping these situations cool throughout the interruption of this transmission. And that's just consistent following up on the conflict. It's just important to make sure that the situation doesn't escalate, that it doesn't rekindle, that it doesn't reignite, and making sure that we stay on top of these situations as they do continue to occur. And then last but not least, in the interrupting transmission piece is preventing that retaliation or preventing that future spread. And when a conflict happens, you know, our trained staff, they tend to work in that, whether they're working in that target area or there was some spillage in another community that funds hadn't been allocated to, but these communities we're seeing numbers pouring into our community, and we're seeing increases of conflicts or increases of acts. This is that time where we want to make sure that we deploy all our staff to help cool down those emotions and prevent any further escalation of the issue, working with that victim, if there was a victim, working with their peers, their family, or whoever it may be that's connected to this particular situation. And after we go through the step of interrupting the transmission, we jump right into prevent future spread, which is also reducing the highest risk. And the first thing we do in reducing the highest risk is assessing our highest potential transmitters. So how do we assess the highest potential transmitters? How do we engage, and how do we find who these individuals are? You know, we make sure that we utilize our relationships, and we make sure that we utilize our trust that was established in those communities, whether that was from our past life or our present life, or the things that we've done in the community to create buy-in from individuals that we're trying to identify to work with, or we're trying to create buy-in to work with our staff. But we definitely make sure we utilize our relationships and we work on that trust that was established. We also focus on changing the behavior of the individuals that we're working with. So we engage with high-risk individuals to help them turn away from violence, understanding that this isn't the way to handle the conflict, and educating them about the consequences and the things that happen or the things that can happen based off of the situations that individuals are putting themselves in as we do continue to decrease drivers of violence in these communities. And last but not least, on that reducing the highest risk is having that treatment plan and providing that treatment plan for our staff, you know, and that's a long-term caseload. And I like to think of it as a firefighter kind of approach. You know, our violence interrupters put out the fire, and our outreach workers, they rebuild the house. But understanding when we rebuild in those houses that it's going to take multiple resources, it's going to take other individuals and other entities. You know, we specialize in creating that foundation, but we may not be the experts in the plumbing, and we may not be the experts in the electricity, but we are setting up this treatment to actually pull in those other resources and bring in those other entities to help us in this component to actually build that individual up to their fullest capacity. And then going into the last piece in changing community norms, there's a few different things that we utilize in changing community norms, and that's responding to shootings, mobilizing the community, also preventing future spread. You know, when I think about norm change, for myself, and I know it goes a little bit deeper, I always think about me. You know, I always think about how in my community, when individuals see me make that transition into being outreach worker for this Cure Violence organization, you know, the first thing was our Mikey's doing this work, and it changed the scope on how the dynamics of the community view myself first, knowing what I previously was and the things and the devious things that I previously did, you know. So responding to shootings and setting the norm and changing the norm and getting individuals to understand that violence isn't normal. And in a lot of aspects for everyone that's on this panel, you know, that's exactly what we are. We are them community norm change. We are the first processes of norm change for the communities that we come from. So now going right into the overview, and I would love if my brothers got a second, they could go ahead and switch on their cameras. Brother Frankie, Brother Whatley, I mean, not Brother Whatley, Brother K-Bang, just so we can get into what a community-based intervention looks like, and what the CV model actually looks like, operationalizing the work, the roles and responsibilities, and the day in the life, you know. So I could start with myself, me personally. So how I got introduced to this program, I was actually an 18-year-old participant recently released from incarceration. And I had got a hold to this organization because they actually was coming out to do intervention work in a place that I was incarcerated in. And skipping for a little bit, understanding the values, understanding the morals, and knowing that I wanted change, you know, I just went head in and started doing this work and ended up becoming the youngest person to ever be hired in this work at the age of 18, a little bit over 10 years ago, you know. And I'm happy and I'm proud to say, you know, I was able to work my way up from being a participant to going into that outreach workers slot, and then working my way up to supervisor, program manager, and on up to technical assistant on the national and international team. So then the life of a violence interrupter and an outreach worker here in Chicago, as well as other states, you know, the first thing about all this, again, getting back to the data-driven piece, is understanding that this is evidence-based. So being able to identify first the community that we're going to be working in, but also the community-based organization that will run this efforts, whose missions align with the public health model and with us in regards of attacking this work, but also saturating these communities and finding the right workers that we need to actually build the capacity to actually do this work. So in the roles and responsibilities portion of it, you know, we do a thorough vetting of all of our workers before hiring, after hiring, through pre-screenings, through hiring panels, through our relationships with faith-based leaders, through law enforcement, through community clergy. You know, we do everything that we need to do to really get as much information on these individuals before we go to the next step of the hiring process, to make sure that they are who they say they are, make sure that they do have those relationships, and not only make sure that they're credible messengers, but to make sure that they're suitable enough to do this work. And after the hiring process, you know, our program is set up and we think about our staffing patterns. So from the bottom on up, you have the outreach workers, you have the violence interrupters, who are the individuals who are on the ground interacting with the community, interacting with the highest risk individuals. I mean, interacting with everybody in essence that's in that particular target area, in that community where the program has been implemented at. And then when we think about our management, we also have the supervisor position. And it's kind of complex based on funding and based on the dynamics of that particular site. But you have a VIS and you have an OWS, which is a violence interrupter supervisor and an outreach worker supervisor. And these supervisors will oversee each team. One will be over the outreach team and the other will be over the violence interrupters team. And in some cases, there may just be one supervisor who oversees both, but this individual actually plays the part of overseeing them in the field and actually being an extension of the VI and OW as well. So a supervisor can carry a small caseload, and they also do mediation conflicts in the field, in the communities, based off of the relationships that they have. And then when we think about our program manager or our director, or executive director, which I'm pretty sure my brother K-Bang could speak to once he get the flow in about the work that he's done in New York. And this role is the individuals who do a lot of work with paying attention and working with law enforcement about numbers, getting the data from the hospitals and building out those relationships through the community, as well as building out those resources when we do want to refer participants to get back in school or job training or job readiness or a job and all, or whether that's mental health, whatever it may be. This is the individual who will build out those platforms on a bigger level. And then from our program manager and our partners, as well as our training staff, when we get to the training staff, we have the individuals who, like myself, who oversee a lot of the programming, has weekly calls and is constantly troubleshooting and doing technical assistance with all of our sites all over. So whatever it may be, if that's working a violent incident or strategic mapping or altering the hours so the program could actually function in the way that is needed, based off of the data and based off of the shootings or homicides or whatever violence is present at that time, to be able to be on the clock and respond as necessary. So as we continue talking about the day in life, I want to hand it over to my brother K Bang to talk a little bit about New York and how he's built out the 696 program, but also the 696 Queen Bridge site, but also how he's worked his way up from a ground staff to actual being the executive director at his own capacity for the 696 Queen Bridge site and the CCD initiative.
Peace and blessings. Thank you very much for that, Mike. I appreciate the opportunity. Shout out my man Frankie, heard great things. I know Lori's on this call as well. Just to go back before we talk about the trajectory and the way that we turned a program into a multi-million-dollar organization, I want to say happy born day, Jason. And just listening to you and your passion and that real raw energy that you bring to this work as we talk about credibility, that is a fundamental foundational piece of this. So I see credibility as something that is not always tangible, but it resonates. It's a vibration. And so you can feel somebody's realness. We call them real models or credible messengers in our work. And again, credibility, to your point, Jason, comes from a number of sources. It doesn't mean that you spent 20 years in prison, but it may. It doesn't mean that you were a shooter and you put work in, as we call it in the streets, but it may. It doesn't mean that you've been in those trenches, but it may. And the common denominator for credibility is empathy. Are you able to look at this young person, this young life, this human being, and understand and respect the fact that every human being is a precious gift? And we have an obligation while we're here and have the capacity to do so, to make sure that we're allowing for a peaceful, a healthy, a prosperous quality of life for communities, especially those where people have melanin and have been disinvested in for so long. So again, salute, respect, and such a privilege and pleasure to be here with my Cure Violence Global family. What I have to start with is Mikey is the epitome of this work personified, because he represents, you know, both sides of the gun, all sides of the tracks, formerly incarcerated leadership. He's youth leadership. So when we get a call from Mikey, we tend to drop everything that's going on and form in position, because that brother right there, I mean, he's really humble. He's a humble soul, but he's a super powerful leader. And I think whatever the activity is, I know he's been out there in London and other parts of Europe doing this work. Whenever you see Mikey at the helm, to all people that hear my voice, you are in a privileged position to receive something that is needed. All right. New York City, that's my home. That's my turf. That's my territory. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. I'm from the most populated borough. I come from the underground economy. I grew up in a prison family. I understand what it is to move in survival mode, to make survival mode choices. I live with consequences of that. I'm not formally incarcerated to the extent where I have a prison record, but I've been arrested more times than I have fingers and toes. I'm somebody who escaped the system. I have a brother who was my right hand in the street who just did 100 months in the feds. 9 of the closest people to me in the world that I grew up with, my comrades, spent time recently, are returning now from federal bids. The offers were 40 years. The offers were 25 years to life. For the people that I grew up with, this is the closest people to me in the world. There was a transition that happened in 2010. I had the privilege of working in the City Council of New York to explore and research what methods could we use to address the exploding violence that was happening in the city of New York. We were seeing teenagers with automatic weapons. We were seeing teenagers with assault rifles and grenades. We were seeing young people slaughter each other left and right in the street, weekend after weekend. So I became a part of this task force to do the research to see what could we bring as a remedy to the trauma that was happening in our city. And we looked far and wide. We looked globally, but we ended up going to Chicago to find out that, you know what, something that was once being called ceasefire has evolved. That there was a gentleman named Dr. Gary Slutkin who very, very brilliantly took an analogy and scientifically proved and created an evidence-based model around the fact that violence acts and behaves as a communicable disease, that it travels that way. And that's the model that Mikey so eloquently laid down, those three major points of our model. What we did in New York was we applied a human justice approach to this work. I think London is a little different. I was looking at some statistics earlier when Mikey called me around violence in London, and I was noticing, okay, the stabbing rates are what we have to pay attention. And I was noticing in New York, there has been an uptick in stabbing as we've been working on getting the shooting levels down. But what all that research very quickly that I did brought to mind was the fact that violence comes from an attitude, from a mentality. And until we address mindsets, then we can't address the problem at all. Until we establish and understand the issues that are happening from trauma. They say hurt people, and it hurts. Until we really put ourselves in a position to work from that perspective, we are going to have a lot of the same. So in New York City, when we did our research around 2009, as a co-architect of this, I was able to pull on and bring in the experts from Chicago to train and teach us in the model called Cure Violence. And when we sat down to do that, we got advocates from around the city. Myself, Councilmember Williams at the time, raised $4.8 million to pilot this work in 5 different locations. Since then, we have raised the revenue around this model in our city to approaching $50 million. So as it pertains to this work, they call me the Michael Jordan of this work in New York City. Because when Michael Jordan played in the NBA, he didn't start the NBA, but when he got in there, he raised the stakes. He made it a global phenomenon. He brought the resources. Every player in the NBA salary went up when Jordan hit the floor. Well, as it pertains, and that's humbly as I can say it, as it pertains to New York City and surrounding areas, that's what I did and that's what we do. The nonprofit that I'm the executive director of now is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit that started on a couple $100,000 of a program. So being from Brooklyn, New York, I said, I've learned a lot. Before I knew about Cure Violence, I was in this work. Before I knew and understood the codified method, we were doing things in the Black community, in the brown community, to intervene, to work with our children, to work with the violence that was happening. But this model gave us a toolkit. And so when I learned this and I combined some of the things I had been trained in by my mentors, God bless his soul, Eddie Ellis, former Black Panther, and others who were schooling me, I said, okay, where do I go to demonstrate some of these great practices? And I built with Mikey. I talked to Marcus. I talked to Kobe. I talked to people like I had heard about, like Juice and others in this field. And we came up with Queensbridge houses. Why? Queensbridge houses, after Cabrini Green in Chicago, which had been knocked down, is the largest public housing development in North America and arguably the world. So when you want to see if your thing is right, if you want to see if you got that high score, if you want to see if what you're doing is what has to be done, you go to the most challenging place you could do it. That's why great warriors stand in the ring with great warriors. It's like, let me see what you up against and how you respond there. We went to Queensbridge houses, not because I'm from Queensbridge houses. That's significant. That's important. The fact that I wasn't from this project means that they had a bet going on when I got there. They said, this kid from Brooklyn, he's not going to last 3 weeks. We're going to put his brains on the sidewalk within a month. There were different bets going on. Is this going to really work? Is he going to be able to maneuver? Can't nobody come out here and talk to our streets, to our shooters, to the gangs. There's at least 5-6 sets in Queensbridge that really get it going. That means they really playing with them toys and them guns out there. So when I got there, the tenets that were laid out in terms of
Hey, Kate, can I give you 30 more seconds, bro, so Frankie could do it? So Frankie could talk.
Absolutely. I'll wrap it up right now. The tenets that were laid out, the 3 points to the model that were laid out is exactly what allowed us to go to the largest housing development in the world, Queensbridge houses, and go 365 days with no shootings, no killings, unprecedented. You look back 20 years, you won't find those numbers. Peace and blessings. Thank you for the moment to share with y'all. I appreciate it more than you know. Salute.
Brother K, peace and thank you, brother.
Peace.
Brother Frankie, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience in Latin America and what the implementation has looked like from the Latino community here in Chicago and how you've been able to implement this in other sectors across the country, outside of this country?
Real quick, a little background. My name is Frank Sanchez, Pure Violence Global. program specialist, mainly working in Latin America, Central America, born and raised here in Chicago, little village community. Joined the gangs in the late 70s when I was about 11 years old. By the mid 80s, I was incarcerated, did 25 years. In 2008, when I was released, a credible messenger reached out to me. And the big thing about this credible messenger was, at one time he was my enemy. He reached out to me, introduced me to this program, and here I am right now. I started as an interrupter in Chicago, working in a little village back of the yards, Brighton Park. Now I'm working in Central America, Honduras, Mexico, Colombia. There's a strong gang and cartel presence in Central America. And we got some good, credible messengers doing some great work out there. And the difference between, I would say, the States and over there is credible messengers all got different faces, different backgrounds, like it was just mentioned. Over there, Rosa, the woman that fed the kids in the neighborhood as they were growing up. But these kids grew up to be gang leaders, shot callers. So they respect her. So when things happen in the community, she would go talk to them and they listen. We got Alfonso. He has a little shop where he fixes everything, refrigerators, and he would take the kids in, give them something to do. Again, these kids grew up to be gang members, gang leaders, and he's a credible messenger with them. Mexico, we got people that used to be part of the cartel working with us. It's real different. Over here, we got ex-gang members doing the work. I'm one. In Honduras, there is no ex-gang members. It's not allowed. Either they kill you or you go to church. And when I say you go to church, I mean they monitor you. They monitor it. Make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. We've been in Honduras for about 8 years. We got 3 sites right now. We should be putting, by the end of the year, maybe we'll have 2 more. COVID-19 has kind of hit the brakes on a few things. In Mexico, we got 2 sites, and one in Juarez and one in Sinaloa, Culiacan. We would have been up and running in Chihuahua. Again, COVID-19 kind of hit the brakes on a few things. Hopefully we get this going soon. It's a small world. I mean, a lot of the same stuff that's happening here is happening over there. I would say on a different level. There's a lot of femicide and a lot of femicide going on in Latin America. So that's like a whole new thing we're working out there, besides the gangs. We partnered up with UNICEF. They trained our 3 teams out there in child protection and gender-based violence. So something new to add to our tool belt. Hopefully soon we're all going to be trained in it. I know last year the gangs out there were asking for, they would stop at someone's house and ask for the daughter to be ready at a certain time because they wanted to take her to the prison, to their homies. That's serious, you know, and we had an interrupter that was able to stop some of that in her community from happening. Things are like kind of on a different level, but we got credible messengers doing great work out there. And we got them here. I mean, we got them everywhere, you know. Oh, happy birthday, Jason. You know, but I'm open to any questions.
Frankie, thank you so much. And Demetreas, thank you. The first thing I is, Mikey, I hope everybody can stick around for some questions, can they? Are you happy to go to questions now, Mikey?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've got Hashi. and we've got Jason, we've got Frankie, so we've got a number of people, and I've got a few questions, so sorry if I jumped in before you'd quite finished there. For me, it's the most powerful thing. So I've obviously been at each of these webinars, and the most powerful thing is hearing people that are doing the real work. I mean, it just goes to show that what you talk about and how you talk about it just demonstrates that this can happen, and people will tell you, I'm like a dog with a bone around this. This will come to London. I've been hanging in there, and I've been nagging Mikey and Laurie, and been working with my colleague Hashi, who seems for some reason to have still on mute and no picture, but I'm gonna
I'm listening.
You're listening. Good. So I'm going to ask the first thing, because the biggest question we get asked, and I think we've proved it already, is, can we find credible messages in London? Are there people in London that could be credible messengers? Mikey, Hashi, you got views on that?
Yes, so I'll be the first. So I know I kind of hit on this in an earlier webinar early on this week, and definitely there are credible messengers in London through the partnership that we've been able to fund. Been able to continue to build with Safer London. Safer London was able to introduce us here at Cure Violence to a brother like Muhammad Hashi, and me personally, that was one of the first individuals that I actually got to see the streets of London with. This brother took me through some of the target communities that we be looking to implement in, and hands down, in the door, that brother is one of the most credible messengers that I've seen across boroughs, across cities in his work, and it's been an honor to meet that brother. But outside of even just highlighting the credibility of brother Hashi, that brother actually took me to meet some of the potential high-risk transmitters in these communities that we work with, and some of those brothers and even 2 or 3 sisters were very credible, and I can actually see doing the work. They have the relationships needed in their communities. They have the drive to actually want to see something different, and the biggest thing, that they come from their life. They know about it. They know how to identify the individuals who are still involved with it. And then we talk about a brother like Jason, who I had the privilege of meeting a few weeks ago, and I know he talked a little bit about credibility earlier, and that's also a credible brother who's been doing this work in a different capacity, but also in the same capacity with the youth. So when we think about, is there credibility or are there credible messengers in London? Yes, there are plenty, but there are credible messengers all over the world. They may be in different capacities, and they may all not have street backgrounds, and they all may not be the individuals who were previously incarcerated, as my brother K. Bain said, but credible messengers are everywhere, as Brother Frank said. We can all say it over and over and over, but yes, there are lots and lots of credible messengers over in London.
Can I just add one? I'm sorry to interject, but in talking about credibility, something that the model really points out and has been driven home more and more is it's not only credibility, it's credibility and suitability. And you have to be simultaneously both. You can have someone who has notoriety, is popular, is influential, but has not yet made that mental transition into becoming a real model for the people. And as Jason pointed out earlier, there's a lot of vulnerability in that. There's a lot of stigmatization around people saying, you know what, I've been in those shoes. I may have dealt with substance misuse. I may have been incarcerated, or I come from a family. These are things that it takes a lot of courage, and it takes the proper training. So we're looking for people in London and elsewhere that are both simultaneously credible and suitable.
Exactly. Thank you for that.
And that's a really good link into the next question. And then I really do want to give everybody the opportunity to say something. But the other question is, how do you train folk to do this work? And more importantly, and this is really important to me, how do they get compensated? So often we expect people to do stuff like volunteers or blah-de-blah-de-blah, and I hear a lot of that there's volunteering programs. And for me, what I love about the Cure Violence model is you're professionals that are paid to do a difficult professional job. So can you tell us a little bit about the training, the compensation, and how you support people to do this work?
Right. So First, with the compensation, I can say that look different across all cities, just depending on what budgets are like, what's the cost of living, you know, so that may vary. But just like any other individual, you know, whether that's law enforcement or a bomber going in to deactivate a bomb, you know what I mean? We want to make sure that our staff have all the knowledge that's needed to really be able to go into these situations and de-escalate, you know, so we have a super extensive training, which is a 40-hour violence interruption and reduction training. Currently, we're doing it virtually because of the current crisis of COVID-19, but we do host trainings and we try to keep it at a capacity of 15 to 20, just so everybody can really get the bulk of it, but also can be interactive in it. But before then, we were doing trainings in person where we would set up and come to the city to really get a better understanding of what the community looks like, what the streets look like. So we want to be really interactive as possible. And we've also developed the approach to actually be having the trainings done in these communities so we can actually be hands-on and present that presence. But that training is a variety of things. That 40-hour training looks like the health solution to violence, what the interruption proper process looks like. So information gathering as much information as needed to work this situation, strategy building, different strategies that you can use to intervene in these situations, as well as putting in the action play before you actually get out there and try to interrupt the situation, knowing that you crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's before you put yourself in a situation that you have no idea about. We have training around changing behaviors and norms, what risk assessment and risk reduction looks like for those high potential transmitters that we're looking to change the mindset on. Communication techniques for the staff to actually know how to communicate when approaching, but also knowing how to communicate to other audiences about the work that we do. Professionalism, who you actually work for, what that you are now a change agent, that you are in the public health realm and you are a public health worker. Pillars of management, what it looks like to actually run a team meeting, what it looks like to be able to identify hot spots in these communities, what it looks like to, you know what I mean, understand how important supervision is so there won't be any relapse in that particular staff members and that person's journey, you know, and I can speak a lot about how relapse and health coping mechanisms in a life before care violence plays directly into that. And also our database training, which is super essential because if you didn't document it, you didn't do it, you know, and sometimes a lot of in our realm of work, you know, we're always out in the community and we're constantly out in the community. So we simplified the way that individuals can go into the database and put in the work that they're doing on a day-by-day situation. But going right back into the compensation part, it does varies, but we look to make sure that we are compensating our staff to actually not need to put themselves in a situation to do something to bring in. So we want to make sure that we're compensating them so they won't just be comfortable, but so they can actually make a living and they can have a living and focus on their work without having those barriers of stress to feel like they have to go back and get involved in any street activity if that's what they were doing, or revert back to using drugs because they don't have the particular finances to do the things that they need to do. So it's different across all cities, but we would say, you know, definitely we compensate our workers very well, and I think it's important to compensate our workers well. If any of my colleagues, anyone else would like to add in on that.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
I'll say something. Yeah, people talk about training. You said something there, Mike. You gotta have somebody credible first, and you gotta have somebody that's trained. And I tell you this now, no one, like, you see me, I had to develop myself. But when I came to Safe London, they offered me training. And you see, anybody can be trained to do the job. Yeah, the day-to-day job, as long as they've got that passion and that drive in them. Yeah, and you can keep them within the policies and the procedures and the legislations of the country, to be totally honest with you. I work from the legislations, come down to policy, come down to organizational policy, come down to procedure. Very few individuals are like me. I had to work 10 times harder than another person to get the same result. So the training that I've got is 10 times more than another person, yeah? And I probably deliver 10 times more than another person. But I don't believe that another person can't be trained just as I can't be trained to do the job. So it's about finding the right individual. And if you find the right individual with empathy and passion, it's like any other job, because people always say get a job in what you like to do. If they are passionate about doing this work, passionate about changing young people, passionate about stopping the violence, it's simple to train them to do the job. And I'll tell you that now. Yeah, as long as that passion's in there and they're credible, you can train them to do the job. Cut. It weren't that hard to train me, and I'm training others now, so I'm doing my thing. So I'm testament to that. I'll say that.
Brilliant, thanks, Jason. Dimitri, did you want to come in? And Frankie, and I'm determined that I'm going to get Hashi to contribute to this. So I don't know who wants to go next. Dimitri?
That's K Bang. You can call him K Bang.
K Bang. Okay.
Yeah, K Bang.
Peace. Well, Muhammad, what's up, man? I seen your face in great places with a lot of wisdom. Salute, man. We haven't officially met, but Mikey speaks highly of you, and I've done some homework on you. I know that you're an authentic human being. I respect you tremendously.
Appreciate that, bro. I was gonna say to you, I was appreciating the t-shirt you was wearing before, if I'm honest.
Oh, okay.
the Chocolato one.
Oh, Chocolatito, that's a young boxer from Harlem. He's part
amazing.
of the team. Yeah, so the way we're talking about compensation, we're talking about training. So Black people specifically, Black, brown people of color have been dehumanized in our societies for a long time. Let's start there. Let's start with the fact that when I say dehumanization, the core of the way that we approach the work is human justice. It means that if we start at criminal, we can't even proceed. You have to start at human and then go into justice. Criminal justice is a myth and a farce. It has not working. It has not worked, it's not working. So when we look at people in the communities where we see most violence, there's a commonality. There's a common thread. So I don't care if we're talking about London, if we're talking about Little Rock, if we're talking about Long Island City. What we see in common is that basic human needs have to be met. How does this matter when we talk about, how does this equate itself into the conversation around training and compensation? So safety is first. What Mikey said is true. It's about people becoming safe with themselves and understanding that we are actually accountable for public safety in our communities. We are the most responsible. We're closest to the problem, it's been said, closest to solution, furthest from the resources, unfortunately, but it's our responsibility. Once you activate that in a human being's mind and you humanize them, then you've taken a revolutionary step. The second part is compensation. In my organization, the first of its kind that uses what I'm describing, cure violence and a human justice approach. In our organization, you have 4 things working for you. So the wage in New York City, the poverty line is about $24,000 to $27,000. The community that I work in, that I'm headed to now, the average or median income is under around $13,000 a year. If you go 4 blocks to the left, the median income is $136,000. So we're talking about poverty pockets. So when I employ somebody at CCD, which is the nonprofit I represent, Community Capacity Development, when I employ somebody, I want to pay them well above the poverty line so they don't have to make the survival choices. I also want to provide tuition reimbursement, 100% health insurance. I want to give you emergency loans with no interest in case you run into situations that are emergencies in your family. And last but not least, 401k. So this is a violence interruption organization built on human justice. But in order for me to launch this, these 4 essential components have to be in place. You can't talk about stopping violence and not talk about income equity. You can't talk about stopping violence and not talk about historic structural racism. You can't do so. In everything we do, we have to blend this into the conversation and into the work so that people feel humanized that have been historically dehumanized.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. Frankie, do you want to add anything to this? And then, folks, this is going to overrun a little bit, but I'm not cutting it down. People can chip out, but I think this is such an interesting conversation that I am going to let it continue. Obviously, K-Bang's got somewhere to go. In fact, he's probably on the way there now, so if we lose him, so be it. But Frankie, Hashi, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your experiences, but Hashi in particular, I know you've been involved with this with me right from the beginning, and I think you and I have stuck at this, and I think you, like I, can see how this can and should be happening in London. So I really want to give you the opportunity to talk about it. But I just want to talk to Frankie a little bit about that training, because Frankie seems to have so much of this international experience. This was a US project that now he's taken out into Latin America, into Honduras and what have you. Just wanted to see how that training and everything had landed there, really.
I'll say when the training started, we had to do different trainings because you got two groups out there, big groups, 18th Street and MS-13. So you live in that community, that's all you know. So when we started the training, no one from one side wanted to sit with people from the other side. It was a trust thing, they didn't have it. You know, so we had to do separate trainings with the teams. We're on a whole another level now. Now they're like family, you know, they've grown. So that was a process, Just for them to, I mean, it's a whole different dynamic out there. As far as compensation, they get paid, but nobody knows. Because extortion's a big thing out there.
Okay.
Nobody knows they get paid. They volunteer. And we're under the umbrella of the church out there. Because that is one of the things that is respected by the groups. You know, so we got pastors, pastores, some of them that are doing the work with us. They volunteer, they go to the community, they do the work, they do, you know, but nobody knows they're getting paid because everybody and everything gets extorted out there.
Brilliant.
And that's the life.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. And I'm sure I could speak to you for hours, and I may just get your phone number and do that. Mikey, Hashi, do you want to quickly have a little bit of a conversation about what you did when you met Mikey in London, what you experienced, etc. And Hashi, why still, even when I'm chasing you down, and you're a busy man now, you're a counsellor, you've got an important role, but when I chase you down, you still give us your time to pursue this. So over to you, Hash.
I just wanted to just quickly cover. So for me, I've been a youth worker for 20 years, started in 2000, I think at the age of 16, a long time ago. And for me, traditionally, youth workers existed. We had youth workers in our local youth clubs. We had places to go. We had people we respected and people we were kind of afraid of disappointing. But also, you know, like there's always a physical fear. Even though they don't beat you up or they don't do anything to you physically, you've got that kind of reverence for them. And for us, that was an extension of our community. So these people, usually they came from our community. They were well respected, well known. They knew your parents. They knew the people that worked in your school, etc. So for me, that was like a bit of a safety net. And then bureaucracy got involved. You know, it started being about qualifications, theoretical risk, writing reports, etc. And what they've done is, I think across the whole youth service in the whole country, they started turning around and say, you can't be a youth worker unless you got this JNC qualification, or if you didn't study this course for a year or 2 years, etc. And for people coming from an area of poverty, low income, you got so many different things that you have to prioritize in order to survive. And for me, what that done is it changed the whole workforce. And we got into things that you're getting people that don't look like us coming into our communities, people that don't really respect us or understand, because everything they've read about engaging with our young people is on paper in a safe space around a different kind of environment. So for me, it was weird because, for example, if you live on my estate, you grow up with risk, you grow up understanding risk, you grow up understanding if you see a dark car coming around the corner, or you see 5 or 6 people on bicycles riding through, your survival instincts kick in. So you're always aware, you're always hyper aware, you're always hyper vigilant. That's how you grow. And for people that don't come from that environment, it's hard for them to kind of understand risks as they're coming, but they'll still write risk assessments. They'll still write risk assessments for your sessions, for the area. And for me, I found that really weird. And so I feel like youth work slowly started to die at that point. And for me, one of the biggest eye-openers was working side by side with some of these people that don't really understand. And I think one of the biggest problems we've got with police in the UK is the fact they don't come from our areas, they don't come from our communities, and they have a perception when they're coming in. So for me, even, you know, working alongside some of these qualified youth workers, so I haven't got a single qualification around youth work. I've never done any courses. So I've done bits of training, but I've never really felt like training benefited me because it's coming from people that didn't understand our community. So you can't come to me as someone from the community, someone that's grown here, and you tell me how I engage with our kids. Do you know what I mean? There was no co-production, and there was no respect for that knowledge. And for me, it was so weird working side by side with these people that would say things like, "Oh, Hash, them lot are getting on my nerves, you know, chat to your kids." And I'm, you know, like, we're in a professional environment, so I kind of have to just hold myself, and I'm thinking, your kids. Like when things get a bit intense or there's trouble, they become my kids all of a sudden, meaning you're almost like a visitor. Do you know what I mean? And for me, you know, Brother Demetreas, when he's talking about dehumanizing people, I feel like that's something that's been happening to our kids for years, to the point that when you see a group of black youths here in London, automatically, even as a black man, your first instinct is, raw, what am I wearing? What do I need to be aware of? What am I going to be doing? How am I going to react? And that's something that's almost been trained into us by the media and by the news, etc. So even for me, is at that point, I started just doing my own thing, working with who I could work with. I wasn't thinking about funding. I was just doing whatever I could. And for me, I kind of lost that, like that hope in that system. And for me, that's why it's a pleasure for me to meet Laurie and specifically Mikey, because, you know, Mikey, one of the first things he said to me, and I won't forget it, you know, and it's mad because he said to me, Hash, no disrespect, I don't know you, but when I'm coming with you around can I wear my jewels? Like, and for me, that's I don't want to say it's a hood mentality, but it just shows that awareness, the level of awareness, because we got, no offense to anyone, we got people that are not from our communities that come in wearing their Rolexes and their APs and all these jewelry. You're just thinking to yourself, are you mad? You've got your £1,000 iPhone, you got it to your ear, walking through the hood, and you're thinking, bro, like, that's how I know you live in a different world. So for me, again, even guy with Mikey, so one of the things I wanted to do with Mikey, obviously, was show him, like, I know your bits are a lot worse than ours in terms of how active, you know, we were seeing about the rack. We've got people that imitate that around here. We've got people that our young people really look up to, that kind of the music side of things. They look up to the lifestyle, even though they're not really understanding it. And for me, I wanted Mikey to see, do you know, I feel like sometimes Americans, they look at England like, yo, Queen's English and tea and, you know, that kind of stuff. And I thought, let me take Mikey really, like, to some of our little hoods, even though it's not as bad as it is in America. Let me show him some of, and for me, it's always safe, because I've never had fear from these young people. You know, I've got a degree in biomedical science. I've got a master's in forensic science. I've got an honorary PhD. I'm a qualified science teacher, but I've still been stabbed. I've still been shot. I've never been involved in no gangs. I've never been involved in criminality. So sometimes a lot of people externally think that, you know, they put the responsibility on the young people. Like, yeah, you can choose the life. Bro, you could still get shot and stabbed now and don't know who it is. You could dead today. You know, me, even as a big 36-year-old that's been living here since 1989, I still have to walk and still have my backup, because it's just like that. And a lot of people don't understand that, because they've never had to, you know, kind of submit to the environment in order to survive. There's always that perception that our young people should be thriving because it's a choice when they're struggling to survive. Again, as Brother Demetreas was saying, there's high levels of poverty around here, which breeds crime. You know, a lot of the people around here that are doing crimes are doing it to survive. So for me, even when I took Mikey around, I felt like it was important that I spoke up, because I feel like there's a lot of people, again, as Brother Jason was saying, and happy birthday, bro. As Jason was saying, it's not about what you look like or how you talk or that you've been in a criminal before, you've been in jail. It's about the fact that how are you interacting with these kids? Because a lot of these kids, they've lost hope. They've had people come in and work with them and disappear because the funding disappeared, or come in to do statistics and reports and make it look good. But what they haven't had is people that are constant, people that can hold them to account and vice versa. So even today, if I went out and robbed someone, all these kids will know and they'll be on me. If they're smoking weed and I say, oh, let me get a pull on that split, they say to me, Hash, are you mad? You're moving mad. They're telling me off, because we've both accepted the standard. Right is right and wrong is wrong, regardless of your situation. And I think it comes from that position, because even Mikey, watching your video of you going back into the barbershop and that, I was thinking, you never told me that. What? Do you know what I mean? Because you were actually living what you're talking about. And even though I'm saying it's not necessary for you to have to be living through those experiences, it's important that you have a base to be talking about. You're not talking from books. You're not talking from theory. You're not talking from what someone taught you. So for me, again, just as Jason was saying, for me, the training is minimal. The training is to make sure we fit into the wider scope of how society is, because we haven't changed it yet. And for me, again, Brother Demetreas was talking about working with councilmen. So I'm a councilman, I guess, in terms over here. I'm a deputy cabinet member in Lambeth, where I grew up, where I got shot, where I got stabbed, where I done my education. Do you know what I mean? And I now sit at the seats of powers making decisions where before I didn't have no clue. I was just cutting through, surviving, because that's all we've not even been taught. That's all we've been ever expected to do. And those expectations turn into self-fulfilling prophecies, which lead our ambition. So, bro, like I've never really got the opportunity to say this to Mikey and Louis, but you lot really relit that fire in me, because I was thinking, raw, Chicago's mad, you know, because I'm thinking you go over there, you need to get your gun license and have your mash on you and be on some smoke. And around here, we're like, as Demetrius was saying, like, it's a knife thing, very physical, very up close and personal. So imagine all the trauma that man's going through. For me, when I got shot, it took 5 years for me to get diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. I was hyper vigilant, hyper aware, hyper aggressive, hyper everything. And it's fatiguing. And that was me as a 23-year-old, well-connected, well-respected community person. So imagine when our kids are going at 14 and 13, going through watching their friends dead or almost dying themselves. So for me, like I said, Mikey, you guys, Sherry as well, Laurie, you guys, in terms of what you guys are doing over there, you know, before that, it was like films and videos and YouTube. It weren't really real to me. There weren't really no connection. And I felt like people trying to bring this over because it looks nice. You know, these people in high positions can say, yeah, we done this. This is what we done. And there's no effect on the ground. But you lot, first thing you come was, we're looking for people within that community because we can be trusted, which is something we've never felt. We can be trusted. This is our community. We have to heal it. You know, we can't have external people acting like we're disabled or we haven't got the ability, we haven't got the intelligence. We can, but we've never felt trusted with partners in terms of local council or central government, etc., because they always look at us like we are the problem. Oh, you taught your kids this, you neglected them, you not really looking at the holistic thing. So again, going back to the basic, Mikey, appreciate you, bro.
Ashley, thank you so much. Really put you on the spot there asking you to speak, but I sort of had a feeling you might be able to, and probably you could have carried on. We are running over now. Do you know what's incredible is that everybody pretty much has stuck with us, even though we're running 10 minutes over. I would really like to thank everybody. Anybody that wants to contact Cure Violence, because the idea was that we were bringing colleagues back to London and that perhaps Hashi and I would have gone out to the States, and then the Rona arrived and we never got to do that. But we're not going to let this go. We're determined that we are going to work up a plan of how we can bring this to London. Anybody that wants to talk to Laurie or to Mikey, have we got a slide, Laurie? You've been sitting just enjoying and watching for a change. Usually you're centre stage on this.
I don't have a slide, but I'll put our contact information in the chat right now.
Lovely. Okay, so anybody that wants to, and Laurie and I are going to pick this up in the new year. We're determined. If anybody out there is sitting on £1 million, let us know, because we could use that money. And it feels like that we can take this forward. It seems as well that I feel really, I've never met K-Ban, but I will call him K-Ban, talks about the fact of how much money he's been able to generate. So I think, Hashi, we need to be talking to him, you know. So we'll get Mikey to do us an introduction. But I
think we should talk to him in person and fly over.
Do you think so? Okay, we will, Hash. As soon as they've sorted out their Rona and I've had my vaccination, because I'm a bit older than the rest of you, so I'll be getting vaccinated soon. I'm really, really, really sorry that we've overrun, guys. I want to thank everybody. I hope that everybody has a great winter break. And you can get recordings of this on Safer London and Cure Violence's website. And please, please make contact with Laurie and Mikey. and follow up with us at Safer London if you want to continue to be involved. Some of the previous conversations talked about the partnerships that could come together to bring this to London. It has to be hyper-local. And as I've always said from the get-go, Safer London are really happy to champion this. We're not the right people to deliver this. It needs to be delivered locally by people like Mikey and Frankie. So I just want to thank everybody. I'm actually really quite emotional. I said only yesterday I don't get emotional, but Jason kicked off on his birthday and spoke with a certain amount of power, and so did everybody else. So I'm going to say good night now. Thank you very much, everybody. And I look forward to catching up with you when we bring the Cure Violence team to start training our credible messengers somewhere in London. Thank you all so much. Thank you.